Very often we get phone calls from customers who are interested in battery backup. It's often marketed very highly online. Also, it's becoming kind of the next thing to add to your solar system. So we kind of want to discuss the pros and cons of battery, what it does for you, what it doesn't do for you. The number one question I always get is, Josh, I want to get battery to store my power and then use it at night because they think it's going to save money. The reality is will do the opposite. So to get into this, right, the energy coming off your roof is an AC energy. You can't store AC energy. So you have to divert that back to DC to store it. So if I go to use that power at night, I'm inverting it back to AC again. So when the energy gets inverted from AC to DC to DC to AC, you're losing about 10% of your power. So it's better to not go that route. The reason why that's marketed is because some states are not one-to-one. Since we're a one-to-one net metering state, if I push on 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy to the grid, you could credit for that 1,000. Other states like California is 2-to-1. So if they push on 1,000, they only get credit for 500. Therefore, losing 10% from the battery better than losing 50% to the utility company. So battery intended for saving money is not really a good option. What battery is good for is backup. So the number one problem with solar that is not talked about is that if the grid goes down, solar goes down. When you have a solar system, it's grid tied. So there's two reasons why solar cannot operate independent of the grid. The first thing is safety, right? So if the grid's down, I can't push power onto the grid because it's down. It's a safety hazard, excess energy, right? But the house is producing. The other thing is solar isn't a constant stream of energy, right? It's going to go up and down depending on the day, the year, the weather, other factors. So for example, if you have a 10,000 watt system, I'm not producing 10,000 watts the whole entire day. It's going to go up like a bell curve and then go down. So let's say the grid goes down at 8 a.m. and the system is only producing 1,000 watts, but the house needs 8,000 watts. It's going to trip, right? I'm not producing enough energy to run those loads. So what the grid does, it's the buffer, right? It fills in those gaps and voids that solar often has. So that's where solar works in conjunction with the grid very well. So if there is no grid, you need another buffer, right? The buffer in that case is going to be your battery. The battery fills in those gaps. So if the house, using our example, needs 8,000 watts and the solar is producing 1,000, the other 7,000 come from the battery. So then the house can run. The next question I always get more often than not is, I want battery to run my house for at least 3 days. So my first question is always, what are we running, right? So why I say that is because you can get months of battery backup depending on what it's running, right? So if we're running just a light and a fridge and I have just one battery, I can run in perpetuity. I'll never run out of battery power because every day the battery is getting recharged again from the sun. So really the only time the battery capacity matters is at night when I'm not producing energy. So then it gets into, okay, what loads am I running at night? If it's a 240 volt or a 120 volt load. That's going to be for your 240 well, air conditioning, heat pumps, dryers, hot water heaters. These pull a lot of energy. So then whenever we size a battery, it's not for the length of time, it's the heaviest amperage load that we're running. So then we get into, okay, this battery can push out 25 amps, but my AC needs 40. Obviously, there's a problem, right? I need more battery capacity to run that heavier load. So then it gets into longevity of time, right? So if I have a 40 amp circuit, 240 volts, you get watts by taking volts times amps. So if I take 240 times 40, looking about 10,000 watts, right? So if that runs for 1 hour, that's essentially 10 kilowatt hours. My battery capacity is 10 kilowatt hours. That battery's dead in obviously an hour. The problem is there's running amperage, starting amperage, so it gets complicated. But just to give you an example of why we're sizing batteries based upon what the loads we're running and not the time. The time is important, right? We all want to never run out of battery, but again, it goes back to what am I running? So when you get into full home backup, which we do, we had to manage those heavier loads. So usually we'll lock loads out. So if someone says, I want to have the whole house up and running you need about 15, 20 kilowatt hours of storage, basically because of that amperage load that we need. But we still can't run a 200 amp panel, right? Just doing some quick math there. So they'll say, okay, I always ask the question, what can we live without, right? Usually the first thing is a dryer, right? Grid's down, I don't need my dryer. So then we'll basically lock that load out so that load's not pulling energy, right? So that battery won't trip, but also won't drain the battery quicker. The problem with battery, which is not talked about nearly enough, is battery is going to have problems in the winter running heat pumps or electric heat, right? Because they're going to pull a ton of energy. So I'm not as concerned with air conditioning because the sun's shining for, 12 hours a day. I can keep recharging that battery. But the heat pump, I might only have, the sun setting or coming up at 7, setting at 4:30. We don't have nearly enough time to keep recharging those batteries for the nighttime. So can it run a heat pump? Yes. The problem is the longevity of that run. It might only be, an hour or two, right, before those batteries are dead, just because the amount of juice required to run that heat pump. So all in all, battery is always a good investment for homeowners that lose power a lot. So if you're the customer who my power goes out twice a month, battery is a good addition to solar because then we have backup, but we're not relying on a fuel source like natural gas or propane. So to kind of get at the cost, you can get a 26,000 watt generator to run the entire home about anywhere from 12 to 15 grand. You can get a battery system that's going to run partial home about maybe 11 to 12, full home about 17 to 20. So a little bit more, but you're done as far as costs go, right? Because we all know how much propane and natural gas can get to run these generators. Also, it's an engine, so you have oil changes and you have the battery to start the engine. There's maintenance costs that are not associated with battery. So there's always pros and cons to both. The long-term, obviously, investment for battery is better, but the amperage capacity is a little bit less than the generator. So it's always up to the customer, which one they want to go with to meet their needs and what they want to back up.